Welcome to the Dr. Wyatt Show podcast, where developing a long-lasting, happy relationship is the status symbol to achieve, and following my 6 marriage steps is a path to help get you there. I'm your host, Dr. Wyatt Fisher, a licensed psychologist specializing in marriage counseling. Remember, you can contact me on the Dr. Wyatt Show at any time. Call 720-307-7347 with your marriage questions. Leave a voicemail and I'll respond back to it on the next Dr. Wyatt Show podcast episode. Today I'm going to talk about the importance of using sexy games in your relationship. So what are sexy games? Sexy games are things you can purchase. They're a board game or they're a card game of some kind that facilitate romance in your relationship. They facilitate sexy time. They facilitate connection in your relationship. And we need this. All of us need this. When you've been together for a while, things in the bedroom can get boring. They can get stale. They can become predictable. So we need to spice things up and keep things lively because that keeps us focused and engaged. So I'm going to go through 4 reasons to consider using sexy games in your relationship. The first one is to foster emotional connection. A lot of these sexy games that are available start with emotional closeness. So a lot of them have cards that you read questions to your partner, such as, what's on your bucket list? Or what are your biggest goals for the next 5 years? Or what are some of your biggest regrets? Things like that. Things that we typically don't talk about with our partner. And as I'm sure you know, emotional closeness and connection is often a prerequisite before we can have hot, steamy physical connection. We need to have close, warm, emotional connection first. So a lot of these games, these sexy games, start there. A lot of them promote conversation, they promote communication, they promote openness, and so you get to learn about each other. You get to have some creative questions that you can ask one another that normally you don't talk about. Because all of us are changing. We have a love map inside of us, and what that means is that we're constantly changing inside of us with what we're thinking about, what we're dreaming about, what we're stressing about. The love map analogy is if you think of a city. Think of a map of a city. The map of the city today is different than the map 10 years ago, 30 years ago, 100 years ago, because cities are always evolving. There's new buildings, there's new roads, new things are constructed, old things are torn down, and we're the same way. But a lot of times we have an outdated map of our partner. We're not staying updated. We think we know them. We think we know who they are. We think we know what matters to them. But unless we're continually connecting and talking and opening up about those ideas and that type of information, we're going to get outdated. Just like you would be outdated if you had a 100-year-old map of a current city. The map is no good. It's outdated. We get outdated. So that's one reason to consider some of these sexy games that you can purchase, is because a lot of them start with the emotional closeness, the emotional connection, the emotional openness, so that you can get to know your partner again. You can explore topics and talk about things that you normally don't. So that's one reason to consider sexy games. The second reason is to foster romance. Think about when you were first dating and courting, there was non-stop romance. You probably had nice candlelight dinners, you probably had sensual massages, you probably had picnics by the lake, you probably had love letters, and a lot of that stops when we're together for a while. Our focus goes from on one another outward after we get married. In the beginning, it's all about you, it's all about me, it's all about this connection, this relationship. But once we've achieved that and we've gotten married, we move on. Now we're thinking about the kids. Now we're thinking about the mortgage. Now we're thinking about our careers. Now we're thinking about our 401k. We're thinking about all these other things that are important, but often we take the eye off of our partner. We stop having romance. So that's another reason to consider investing and looking into sexy games, is because a lot of them promote romance. So they'll encourage you to light some candles. They'll encourage you to play some soft music. They'll encourage you to wear something comfortable and maybe something sensual. They'll encourage you to set the scene because setting the scene is romantic. And a lot of us enjoy romance, but a lot of us don't have it in our marriage after we're together for a while, and we need it. A third reason to consider sexy games is because they foster foreplay. After you've been married for a while, often what happens is couples either have intercourse or nothing. And foreplay sometimes is not even present. Or if it is, it will take about 30 seconds to rush through foreplay to get to intercourse. And that's unfortunate because for a lot of low libido partners, foreplay is their main event. That's where they enjoy themselves the most. That's where they experience the most pleasure, the most arousal. But unfortunately, a lot of couples, once they're together for a while, they skip the foreplay or they greatly reduce the foreplay to get to intercourse. But sexy games are great because they bring back the foreplay. So a lot of them will say, if you land on this space, you pull this card, and what does the card tell you to do? And maybe you have to make out for 5 minutes, or maybe one of you has to take off your shirt, or maybe you have to touch someone in a certain way. It's encouraging foreplay. And that foreplay is nice. It's bonding. It's nurturing that physical connection. It's creating a buildup of that arousal, which a lot of low libido partners need. So that's another advantage of these sexy games. It encourages foreplay. You want to learn to slow down physical intimacy. Because if you speed it up and you rush through that foreplay just to get to intercourse, that's not going to be an enjoyable experience, most likely for both partners. You have to slow it down. Research shows low libido partners usually need 15 to 30 minutes of foreplay and of sexual activity before they reach orgasm. High libido partners usually only need 3 to 5 minutes before they climax. So that's a big discrepancy. So if you have foreplay and you're slowing down for foreplay, that provides that time, especially for the low libido partner, to come online sexually, to start building arousal so that they can eventually reach climax, even though that's not necessarily the goal. The goal is to feel close with your partner and to have an enjoyable experience together. And foreplay is a main facilitator to get you there. The fourth reason to consider using sexy games in your marriage is to foster passion. Are you bored in the bedroom? Does it feel like vanilla ice cream for you? Is it predictable? You touch me here, I touch you there. Within a few minutes, everything's finished. That's how it gets for so many couples. We get in a rut. We get bored. And like anything in life, you need variety. You need to change it up. Because even though we like predictability, too much predictability gets boring. Vacation is like that. Our day-to-day life and the grind of day-to-day life can get boring. Therefore, it's recommended to spice it up with occasional vacations because those vacations are completely out of your element. Everything's new, everything's different, you're not in your routine anymore, and there's something really invigorating about that and refreshing about that. And most people can't wait to get to vacation, and then after a while, they're excited to go back home, to get back into their routine. Sexual connection is very similar. If you're just doing the same thing over and over and over, it gets boring. You lose your interest. And so you need to spice it up, change it up. But sometimes we don't know how to change it up. But sexy games are great for that because they'll show you ideas, they'll show you different ways to touch each other, different positions to try. It can get hot and steamy because it's new. It's different and it's creative. They're giving you all these ideas to try out that probably you wouldn't think of on your own. The other reason they can create passion is because they build a lot of anticipation. One of the most powerful aphrodisiacs is anticipation, where you're connecting emotionally and then you're slowly touching each other and then you're moving slowly into foreplay and you're teasing each other as you're slowly doing more contact, and then finally you're having more contact and it becomes more erotic contact, and then it goes into everything. That's anticipation. The longer that's drawn out, the anticipation, the more powerful the contact becomes when you finally make that sexual contact. So that's another great thing about sexy games is they intentionally slow things down so that you're building arousal along the way. You're building anticipation for what may be coming so that when it does finally come, you're finally touching each other and enjoying one another sexually. It's very passionate because there's been a lot of ramp up, a lot of anticipation for what's to come. So those are 4 reasons to consider sexy games in your marriage. The first one is to foster emotional connection. Second is to foster romance. Third is to foster foreplay. And fourth is to foster passion. Thank you for listening to the Dr. Wyatt Show podcast. If you enjoyed the episode today, be sure to click the 5 stars and leave a review. And be sure to share this podcast with one other person in your life. You can text it to them, you can talk to them about it, anyone that you think could benefit from it like you have. For more resources, go to my website, drwyattfisher.com. And remember, your marriage is alive. So if you care for it and nurture it, it will grow. But if you deprive it and neglect it, it will wilt and die. The choice is up to you. Take care.